I have guests aboard Brutus today. This is Nicole, my goddaughter, and her parents, Cesar and Valerie. We are heading back from the meeting of the Brazilian Sailboat Cruisers Association, where I and Elio from Day 12 were speakers and stood for 3 days. There I met a couple that made me thought about how much liberty is important. Paul and Rachel Chandler are English sailors passing by the Brazilian coast. They were guests in the event and were helped by these men, José Spinelli, who is always trying to help sailors passing by Brazilian coast.
Paul was a civil engineer and I was a government economist. So for many years we were very much wrapped up in working hard, as most people do, and I was commuting up to London and Paul was working in Tunbridge Wells, where we lived, as a commuter town in the south of England. But both of us dreamed one day of being free, like so many people do, and being able to go traveling and enjoy sailing long distances and crossing oceans and finding new places. And so it was in 2007 that we finally decided to break free of what was very nice sailing in the Mediterranean, but didn't really satisfy that need to see further afield. And so we went south through the Red Sea and ended up in the Indian Ocean in 2008.
I've never had attended to a meeting of this association, and it was fascinating to see so much people involved in sailing. It was also nice to see old friends like Celso, Duda, Zara, that became a kind of celebrity after the episode we shot, and Alison Maschini, who came to demonstrate a navigation watch created by him.
We headed south to the Maldives. And at that time my father became a little ill. He was well into his 90s, and so we wanted to be somewhere where we could go home to England if we needed to fairly quickly. And so it was natural to go to the Seychelles, which has very good air links. And so that's how we ended up there, and we had a very enjoyable 6 months based in the Seychelles. Paradise on earth.
And you never thought that anything wrong could happen there, because
Well,
No.
we were aware of the piracy problem, and we kept on top of it by such information as was available. And we had been through Pirate Alley coming out of the Red Sea, of course. But the official advice then was that the danger zone was 200 to 300 miles off Somalia. We were almost 1,000 miles away, and we thought as long as we looped towards the south a bit in our crossing to mainland Africa, everything would be okay.
And certainly the Seychelles authorities and the presence of naval forces in the area suggested that they were clamping down on the pirates and keeping them at bay. And when we got ready to leave the Seychelles for East Africa, we went through all the normal formalities and spoke to all the the people that you have to clear out, and not one of them suggested that we shouldn't go. So we felt that we had done as much as we could to ensure that our passage was reasonable.
I really felt at home when I saw a shimmer round circle. I am from the south of Brazil, where this drink is very traditional and popular, as it is in Uruguay and Argentina.
Baixada Rio Grandense.
Baixada Rio Grandense, olha que beleza.
Vai fazer a plaquinha pra gente pendurar aqui na árvore.
Eu sou da República do Rio Grande do Sul e da cidade de Ijuí. Estou aqui há 4 anos. Eu vim velejando, né? Com destino de conhecer o resto do mundo. Daí botaram uma poita na minha popa do meu barco. Eu estou aí agarrado aqui com a turma, aqui ensinando ele a ser gaúcho. Mas estão aprendendo direitinho. Eu sou uma escola para gauchesca.
Você que plantou o chimarrão aqui nesse lugar?
Eu tô ensinando a turma aqui. A turma tá aprendendo direito.
Esse gaúcho é o que mais me dá trabalho.
E pior que é verdade.
Não, depois que eu dei meu WhatsApp pra ele, é de noite, de dia, toda hora tá chamando.
Não, eu disse o seguinte, eu fui trazendo eles, eu fui fazendo chimarrão, eles estão agora aprendendo e aprendem a fazer o chimarrão efetivamente, agora estão aprendendo a chupar, sorver o mate. E agora estão indo devagarinho, eles estão a risco, mas estão chegando.
São Jerônimo. É que é tão pequeno que não tem no mapa, por isso que tu não sabe, tá entendendo?
Eu moro em Florianópolis, estou velejando aqui no Brasil já há mais uns 10, 15 anos, mas velejo desde os 9, 10 anos. Minha família, do pessoal do mar, nasci numa ilha, Ilha da Brava, onde o único jeito de sair de lá ou ir lá é navegando. Antigamente se fazia só a barca vela.
Do Rio, mas sou mineiro. Meu barco ficava no Rio, gostei muito daqui, vim convidado por um amigo meu. E agora eu estou aqui, já tem um mês só.
Mineiro de Belo Horizonte, toma chimarrão, estou na vela há 5 anos.
Eu tenho uns 30, vai fazer 35 anos de vela, né?
Marinizar ela foi fácil.
Olha, foi legal. Quando a pessoa está interessada, fica mais fácil, né?
Eu acho que os próprios velejadores constroem a marina, porque aqui, quando eu cheguei, o pessoal ficou com muito medo que os veleiros fossem embora, que fosse dominado por lanchas, mas virou a casa deles, é a casa da vela. Eu acho que virou referência em Angra e no resto do Brasil. Então eles mesmos constroem essa roda de amizade que eles têm, trocando experiência e informação, eu acho que é tudo para eles.
We were within the Seychelles group of islands. We'd only just started on what we expected to be about a 14-day passage. And we were on the first night, in fact. We didn't have a very helpful wind, so we were beating, and we were in fact motor sailing with the engine on. And I went on off watch, feeling a little queasy, but anyway, settled down in my bunk. And so Rachel was
I was on
in
deck.
command.
And it was a murky night. It wasn't a very clear night. And nothing really there were no other shipping around that I could see. And all of a sudden I heard the noise of an engine, and I looked out and couldn't see any lights. But soon enough I realized that there was a boat approaching us very, very fast. I assumed that it was just a fisherman without lights going from one place to another. And I grabbed a torch to actually see who was there. And as soon as I shone the torch on the approaching craft, they fired some shots. So I quickly dropped the torch, realizing that something was very, very wrong. And I think I was frozen in shock. It's very difficult to imagine that moment. I was just so unexpecting something like that to happen. And I simply registered that a boat full of men, followed quickly by another boat full of men. They approached on both sides, grabbed the sides of the boat and were clambering on board with their guns pointed at me. And my only concern was to show them that I had no guns myself and to submit. And of course, although they spoke very little English, they started questioning me, telling me to turn on lights. They just said lights, lights, and telling me to bring crew on board. And they didn't really understand that we were a small boat and only 2 people. But at that point I started shouting for Paul to come on deck. And I was simply frozen in horror at what was happening. I couldn't believe, it took me a while to understand what was happening. It just seemed like the worst nightmare ever.
I heard the shots, of course. And within moments there was a thump on each side as 2 boats. It was clear in my mind then that we were being attacked. I sat up with nothing on and I thought, no, shall I put on my wide fronts or shall I put in my contact lenses? In the event I did neither, I switched on the EPIRB, which was hindsight was the best thing to do, and I went up on deck, and there was Rachel with, by then, 6 or 7 guys pointing assault rifles at her. And yes, I mean, it was a nightmare. You can't really explain how it feels.
At the moment, you realized that they were Somalis?
Yes, I think so, but we still thought that they were pirates rather than kidnappers, which is what they became, and that's when the horror really started.
Soon after the first 2 boats attacked, a third boat came, another, just an open boat, but with an inboard motor, a slower boat. And there were 2 or 3 men in that, including the leader. And the leader started questioning us. He had a little bit more English. He clearly wanted money, possessions, whatever we had. But soon he seemed to change completely, or indeed he made up his mind that we were going to they were going to take us back to Somalia, all the way back to Somalia. And however much we tried to convince him that this was just a small boat and we had very little money and that we were not going to deliver him a lot of money, he was absolutely determined that we were going back to Somalia. And to cut a long story short, it took us 6 days to get back to Somalia.
They found our satellite phone. It was one of those situations where they're pointing guns at you, they're asking you for your money and your valuables and so on. And in my naivety, I think that the best thing to do is not to be caught out lying to them, but to give everything to them in the hope. And we did. We hoped that they would see another ship and go off and leave us. But in the course of their explorations, they found the satellite phone, and as luck would have it, it worked for them. It hadn't been working for us. And they spoke to their mates on shore. And I think from them they got the idea, 2 English people, they tried to establish that we weren't French because word was around that the French Navy would intervene. But that once they established we were English, they were relaxed. And then the penny dropped, maybe, with their guys on land, 2 English people. $7 million. Their starting price for negotiation.
And how the British government deal with that?
Well, the British government didn't do a lot at the time. There were naval ships in the area, but they decided that our lives were more important than stopping the act of kidnapping. And so they weren't able to stop, they didn't stop the pirates kidnapping us and taking us on shore. And our boat, Lynn Rival, was left in the Indian Ocean off Somalia and was actually picked up by a British naval vessel and brought back to England. But the same Navy wasn't prepared to actually take action at the time to stop her.
The political decision was not to take action. The technical guys, the professional guys were there and raring to go.
They didn't want to get any chances to bad publicity of
well, it is exactly that.
Of a wrong operation.
And they have special trained forces who they were prepared to send in. But the ordinary Marines of the British Royal Navy, you might think, are pretty competent, but they weren't considered good enough politically to reduce the risk of us being killed to a satisfactory level. So unfortunately the highly trained guys were half an hour too late to intervene.
That's what it seems.
By the time we'd been transferred to a container ship, which the pirates had hijacked 10 days before, then it was not really practical for British forces to intervene because there was the crew of the ship and it was a foreign flag ship and you can't really go attacking it.
And these were only the first 6 days of terror. other 382 were still to come. Paul and Rachel Chandler wrote a book called Hostage, sharing with us their story. Still heading back to Paraty, I was thinking how to tell this story in the same day I went to an event that is about something so liberating as sailing. But I don't know, maybe this contrast makes us value freedom even more. In this trip, even Nicole made new friends. And I was granted with a sort of certification that my risotto is really yum. By her standards, at least. I will have to tell this story in 2 parts. But I promise you will not wait much for the second one.